Hi, sixth graders. This video is on solving one-step equations that include fractions and decimals, so please label the top of your page with that I just circled. So let's look at this problem here that we're given. 3/4 g equals 6. So we already know that if our variable, which is g, is being multiplied by something, and we can see that it's being multiplied by 3/4, then we do the opposite, which is division on both sides. So really what we're going to do is we're going to divide both sides by 3/4. And if we think back to dividing fractions, I'm going to rewrite this right here. If I have 6 divided by 3/4, remember when we divide fractions, we keep the first one the same, multiply, change to multiplication, and then flip the second fraction, and then we just multiply straight across. So if really what we're doing when we divide is just multiplying by the reciprocal, then what we could do instead for an equation like this is, I'm going to change my color, is we can just multiply times the reciprocal on both sides. And I'm going to make that a fraction. So if we have a fraction, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. And if we look here at our inverse property of multiplication, we know that when we multiply by the reciprocal, we get 1, and that's what we want to happen right here. We want it to end up being 1 because then we would just have 1g, or we're getting g alone. So when we have a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. Let's do some more problems so we can understand that a little bit more. So the reciprocal is the same thing as the multiplicative inverse. So please write multiplicative inverse, but also write the word reciprocal, which means that we take a fraction and we flip it. So the multiplicative inverse of 2/5 is going to be 5/2. The multiplicative inverse of 2 1/3, first I need to write it as an improper fraction, which would be 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1, so it would be 7/3. And then the multiplicative inverse would be 3/7. If we have 5/6, it would be 6/5. Try the next one on your own, or the next few, and then come back and check. 1 1/2 is the same as 3/2, so the multiplicative inverse would be 2/3. 8 is the same as 8/1, so the multiplicative inverse would be 1/8. And then 4/3 would be 3/4. We need to know what the reciprocal of these things are because we have to use it when we're solving the equations that are coming up for us. Alrighty, so let's remember the multiplication property of equality, which means that if we multiply each side of an equation by the same non-zero number, the two sides remain equal. So basically what we've been doing in our equations unit so far, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So if we have 7 equals n/4, this would be a great problem to write in your notebook. I'm going to rewrite it right here. This is telling me that a number, n, which we don't know, is being divided by 4, and it equals 7. So I'm not doing 7 divided by 4. I'm taking a number bigger than 7, dividing it into fourths, or by 4, and I get 7. So n is being divided by 4, so I do the opposite, which is multiplying, and I'm going to do that on both sides. I'm going to write it like this over on the right side. First of all, I'm on the right side because the variable is on the right side. I can make it a fraction, and I know that n times 4 would be 4n/4, and then the 4's would cancel out. So we've got to add our train tracks there. So that actually cancels out, and we'd have n/1, which is just n, and then 4 times 7 is 28. And then, as always, we need to check it. So I'm going to go back to my equation. 7 equals 28/4, and I know that 28 divided by 4 does equal 7. So it checks. So then I circle my answer. All right, let's do some more. D divided by 3 5/10 equals 4 2/10. So why don't you write that down in your notebook so we can have a lot of examples and practice problems in your notes. So D is being divided by 3.5, which means we're going to do the opposite, and we are going to multiply both sides times 3.5. You could write this out and do it and think way back to how you do it with your decimals, or we can put it into our calculator and we get, oops, sorry, I keep forgetting to do my train tracks for these. D would equal 14 7/10. These, I would say, are the very, very, very most important to check, because we've been so used to dividing that we just want to instantly do 4.2 divided by 3.5, but really that's not what we're doing. So when we check it, that could help find our mistake if we made one accidentally. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 14 7/10 divided by 3 5/10, and I should get 4 2/10, which I do. So then I circle it and then I'm done. I would like you to pause the video and try these 3 in your notebook and then come back and check your work. Alrighty, so here's my work. So for letter E, we can see that M is being divided by 8, so I multiplied both sides by 8, and then 6 times 8 is 48. I checked it by putting 48 into M, and I realized that it does check, so my answer then would be M equals 48. For F, P is being divided by 2.8, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2.8, and I get P equals 4 2/10. Then I put that back into my equation to check it, and it works, so then I go back and circle that. And then for letter G, K is being divided by 4 7/10, and so I take my 2 3/10 and I multiply it times 4 7/10, because that's the opposite of division, and I get K equals 10 81/100, and I had checked it to make sure that it works. If you check it and it doesn't work, that means you maybe accidentally divided, and you just have to go back and re-multiply and redo it. So now let's look again at a question that has a fraction in it. So if we look at 3/4 x equals 12/20, another problem that you should be writing in your notebook right now, we see that x is being multiplied by 3/4, and if we think back to the beginning of the video and we talked about multiplying a variable by a fraction, the opposite then would just be multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite this right here. And I can see that the left side has my variable, and it's being multiplied by 3/4. So I'm going to multiply times the reciprocal on both sides. I already have a fraction that I'm multiplying by, so I don't need to add a 1 under it or anything. So we know that 3/4 times 4/3 is 1, which would be 1x, so that just leaves us with x. And then we have 12/20 times 4/3. Remember, when we multiply fractions, we go straight across and multiply that way. So 12 times 4 is 48, and then 20 times 3 is 60. And if we divide, I know that 48 and 60 can both be divided by 12, and it would simplify then to 4/5. Then what I'm going to do, and I ran out of room, so I'm going to do my check over here, but I'm going to take 4/5 and I'm going to put it back into the equation and make sure it works. So I want to make sure that 3/4 times 4/5 does equal 12/20, and 3 times 4 is 12, 4 times 5 is 20, so that works. So then I know that x does equal 4/5. Let's do another one together, or if you feel ready to pause and go ahead and do all the ones down here and then check, you could do that as well. So if we have 1/2 x equals 8, 1/2, so that's telling me that 1/2 of something equals 8. Not 1/2 of 8, but half of something. So it's going to basically be 8 doubled. So I know since it's being multiplied by a fraction, I'm going to do the reciprocal, which is 2/1. Do that times 2/1. Add a 1 over there, so they're both fractions. And then I know that 8 times 2 is 16, and 2/1 times 1/2, remember, cancels out. so x would be 16. So if I check 1/2 times 16, does it equal 8? I know half of 16 is 8, so then my answer truly would be 16. You pause and do the next two on your own and then come back and check. Alrighty, so 3/4 x equals 9. I know that because x is being multiplied times 3/4, then I take the reciprocal on both sides, which I did, and I multiplied both sides times 4/3, which then would give me x equals 36/3, which is 12. And then I check it, and that works out. 7/8 times x equals 21/64. So I multiply by the reciprocal, which is 8/7. That cancels. And then I know 21/64 times 8/7. I cross-canceled my multiplication. If you just multiplied it straight across, that's fine. And you still should have simplified down to 3/4. But I knew that 21 and 7 can both be divided by 7, so that's how I got 3 and 1 there. And then 64 and 8 could both be divided by 8, so that's how I got a 4 and a 1. So I end up with 3/4. I check it, so then my answer is 3/4. And then our last question of the video, Wilson has 9 pounds of trail mix. How many 3/4 pounds bags of trail mix can he make? So if I think of what we're doing, we want each bag to be 3/4 pounds. So 3/4 times, we're not sure how many bags, so that's going to be our x. And then our total then of what we have is 9 pounds. So 3/4 x equals 9. And then as we know, because we're multiplying by a fraction, then we're going to multiply times the reciprocal on both sides. Because 9 is a whole number, I'm going to just make it a 1 under it, so it's a fraction. So that cancels to 1, so we just have x equals, and then 9 times 4 is 36/3 equals 12, and then 3/4 times 12 equals 9, and I actually really do want to check. 3 times 12 is 36, divided by 4 is 9, so then x does equal 12. So then my answer would be, because it says how many 3/4 pound bags, so my answer then would be 12 bags. That is all that I have. Don't forget to submit your video notes, and have a great day.